Just answering questions with WebTech. Answers first. Donald Trump, printed papergate witness Ivana, and Saudi golf course grave tax dodge. The Illuminati conspiracy. February 10th, 2022, Trump openly denied flushing documents down White House toilets while in office and causing clogs. Yeah, but no, we're not allowed to actually ask and get a straight answer. Staff said they periodically discovered printed paper clogging toilets. Donald Trump was notorious for shredding things that he is legally forbidden from doing so, as the president is not allowed to hide evidence. This was caused by Nixon. So, yeah, no destruction of any recordings of any kind. And if Obama did it, you'd be screaming bloody murder. So, all of you biased asshats that are pro-Trump and will not listen to reality, I don't give a shit what you have to say at this point. Ivana Trump was not interacting with them enough during that time to have seen any of this or be a witness, so he probably wouldn't need to have her accidentally the staircase, which happened July 14th, 2022. Implied Epstein stare. Next, July 20th, at Church of St. Vincent Ferrer, there was a funeral for her. And on the same day, she was buried at Bedminster, New Jersey's Trump National Golf Club for tax reasons. Any New Jersey land dedicated to cemetery purposes is exempt from all taxes, rates, assessment, real estate taxes, personal or business taxes, sales tax, income, anything. And inheritance taxes. Every tax is eliminated. But is it for the chunk of dirt itself or the whole property? Depending on who re-greased the wheels of anti-productivity in New Jersey and or whatever rich bastard was elected that year that wanted those laws, it's not Trump that did this, you can bet that somebody's going to try to make it to where the whole property is taken care of because a grave is on it. If you're not aware of it, normally, if not always, a grave site, the chunk of dirt that the grave is on, and a border around it, can't have any buildings put on it. This is not applying unless you're in a certain state, I'll mention later on if we have time in the video, where even a cremated ash pile is considered a designated gravesite. The whole purpose of cremating a person is so you don't create a gravesite. At least that's what a lot of people believe. And for security reasons, there is no note of the dates the Saudis were in the area, or if they were there, or if this was some sort of Illuminati sacrifice, sacrosanct conspiracy theory, moo-ha-ha. But no, she wasn't a witness to anything that would have had anything to do with Papergate. Donald Trump is absolutely guilty of destroying documents that he's not legally permitted to do, and stealing them. He's guilty of everything he accused before and after everybody else of doing. And it may have been that he decided other people got away with it, even though, to be blunt, he's never had a basis for making these accusations and claims. But he may have decided, since he was told that he was wrong, that he must be right, and therefore he should be able to get away with it too. I mean, I don't know or care what his rationalization is, but I do want to point out Donald Trump never provided a real birth certificate. He provided something that looked coked up and easily generated by anybody with a printer. And it may or may not have been the hospital announcement of birth, but that's more of a ceremonial piece of paper and a keepsake. The only thing Donald Trump ever provided was an image of a negative of microfilm held by the state of New York, designated someone named Donald Trump was born on a specific date. That's the extent of his ability to prove he exists that would be considered traceable with a unbroken chain of custody. And that's it. There are witnesses and news announcements of the birth of Barack Obama because that was done. It would make it in the newspaper. And even that can be manipulated, which is the claim about Barack Obama. But Donald Trump's birth wasn't... There's very few records of Donald Trump being born. Seems like he was screaming Barack Obama birth certificate memes reactionarily. Or he went out of his way not to provide a real satisfactory job of this because, again, with Donald Trump, I'm allowed to demand something of you that has this level of proof to it, but I only have to put out this much proof so I can show dominance. This is a standard behavior by him. And yes, he did have his wife buried there for tax purposes, or ex-wife, and she might have agreed to it. She might have thought it was funny. And legitimately, if you have 10 grave sites in a row, you can't really build on it. I mean, you can, but no one does. There are only a few examples of people putting a building up for a grave site, and it's a mausoleum. You can technically live in a mausoleum legally in many states, but not all of them. Some of them refuse to do it because of safety issues. But yeah, for security reasons, because it was basically a private golf course. It's only a national golf course. Dude, I lived in a town that was a little bit over a mile across when I grew up, and they had a golf course there. And I can tell you for a fact, when I worked there, we had pros come in, and it was an internationally recognized 18-hole golf course at one point. Because we made improvements on the property. That's all you had to do. But Donald Trump can't improve his golf course to the point that it would have an international statement. It says national golf course. Why not international? Now, for those of you who know why that's a bullshit statement on my part, go ahead and type it below. But anyway, no, sorry, if you're into golf enough, you already know I'm full of shit right there. Totally didn't do a mulligan. Next, on a person who died recently, rather tragically, but I am going to reserve judgment. Mini Coopers. There was a recall on some of them that were missing a crash plate. In the event of a crash, it would cause a fuel pump to explode and catch fire. This is about Anne Heche. At the time she died, she was driving either first generation 2007 designed or a second generation 2012 designed Mini Cooper Clubman. Any recalls for it were for airbags, which may be very significant, trailer hitches, which not matter, and engine cooling issues. The 2017-2019 Mini Cooper Countryman, however, had a fuel pump crash plate recall in 2018 because if you hit the thing, it would catch on fire because the high-pressure fuel pump for fuel injection would act like a super soaker spraying gasoline everywhere because it would rupture too easily. The plate was missing. It's an armor plate to keep it from being able to spray everything because the plate stops the spray and also keeps it from getting damaged in the first place. Another thing was when they were dragging the car out of the house that burnt to the ground after she rammed it, the back wheels aren't turning. It also made a horrible squealing noise when moving. Are these related to the original crash? Let's do the timeline for this. The first auto collision was at an apartment garage after being told, get out of the car. She then reversed and fled the scene of the accident. She had done a minor fender bender to what looks like almost storage units or something that you'd park a car in. And she hit it with her Mini Cooper or something. We don't have all the details, but the point is she hit reverse to get it to where she could go around something and drive off. She refused to stop, and the person stopping her could have any motivation of any kind, but he may have decided that this person is encumbered and should not be driving. I should also point out, if you look at the picture of her taken that day, which will be linked below as an archive, she doesn't look like she did in the movies, so she would just be interpreted as some middle-aged woman who was driving a vehicle erratically and making dangerous lane changes and shit, and speeding. Nobody special. Just a person doing something that you would want the police called about. But the first auto collision was a very minor one, but she floored it leaving. It wasn't making any high-pitched screeching noises at the time. The second auto collision, which we don't have any audio for, or video, was a hit and run of a Jaguar. Next, she was filmed, presumably her, speeding down an alleyway and nearly hitting a pedestrian and not making any attempt to not hit them. So something was going on with her, making her do stuff that was reckless, dangerous, and, in my opinion, unforgivable. But that's not relevant. I mean, I don't know all the details, and some details we'll never know because the person who would know is no longer with us. But she nearly at that point killed someone who was simply walking. On apparently Cabrillo Avenue, there's a recording that's supposed to be the third time a blue Mini drove through the area at high speed. Kept circling back and forth and driving through. Just revving the engine and flooring it. This indicates a pattern of behavior. Seconds before the crash, there are two videos showing her speeding, and you can synchronize them up to figure out how far apart they may be, but she was driving a good deal of time at high speed. One of the recording has the audio only in one channel. The other one doesn't seem to have any recording in stereo or anything. It's just a monophonic audio recording. So both of them should be treated as monophonic. You can't hear the differences as she passes or not. Unless we get the original files dumped as is without somebody rewinding and fast forwarding them, and without somebody changing the resolution by running them through while sticking their TMZ logo on any of this, we don't have any valid data. Whoever submitted it should post it publicly as a raw file, not uploaded to a video playing service, as a raw file on archive.org or something like that where it won't get modified. The third and last auto collision happened right after speeding through. She hit a house and it was destroyed along with her in fire. Blunt force impact stopped blood flow and therefore oxygen flow to her brain, causing severe anoxic damage to her. She was not really salvageable at all unless they quickly reestablish blood flow and oxygenation in the blood to her brain. That would require scanning her head, scanning her body, getting accurate information, putting in stents in the blood vessels that were clamped shut, making sure that flow drainage happened. That's arterial and venous flow. Both have to be maintained. That's a lot to do to someone whose head was probably hit pretty hard. And yes, I looked up the number of times a year someone can be salvaged and be able to survive. It's almost zero. And yeah, having the airbag recall or whatever may not have had anything to do with it because she hit at such speed. An airbag is designed to take, depending on the design, restrictions are in place, it has to tolerate half the impact of a head-on collision with a car or a blunt instrument impact to a wall. What they base that on is 55 miles an hour. That's the average speed. Well, 35 is average. So under one designation, they only had to compensate for 35 mile an hour damage in the airbags, full impact. And then the vehicle caught on fire. And then the house. She was pulled out alive at the time. Probably salvageable. But even in a car that's designed to tolerate literally ramming into a wall, unless it was rated up to 60 mile an hour, which is European Union standards or something like that, no. Now, a Mini, mostly designed by a BMW, aka anywhere other than the United States, was probably up to that rating. But it didn't have to be. And again, this is the one that had airbag issues. Maybe. We'd have to know whether or not it was pre or post airbag issue date, which is specific months and years. And whether or not she cared. In one of the pictures, you can see a red cap bottle inside the vehicle that looks suspiciously like it could be alcohol, but it could have been. But the point is, when they did a test of her, she went in a trauma ward, they're going to do blood tests because they have to figure out whether or not the blood's functional, whether she's okay. Blood alcohol tests are also done at the same time. The cause of her being erratic is listed as narcotics, possibly cocaine or other materials, not alcohol. Alcohol would have resulted in less precision. A cocaine-fueled driver may be extremely accurate but not understand time and space scales and do exactly what we saw. That's why that rumor went around for several other famous people being in crashes at high speed, seemingly driving well but not being able to control the speed. You overestimate your ability to compensate because your brain's running at a different rate than it should be, and maybe you can compensate. And there's a couple of cases in where I lived in Portland where people were on cocaine and were able to do ridiculously high reflex rate activity and not crash, at least not easily. Now that was all very depressing, so I'm going to do something funny. I have a relative that sold his mom at the scrap iron dealership. He'd drive her and all the scrap iron onto the weighing scales, and then when he parked, she'd go off and have lunch, and he'd drive the vehicle back on, empty, to do the differential weighing. He sold his mother a scrap iron. Next thing is, if you surround your property with a trench and put in all of the ashes from a person, does that make the entire property exempt from taxes because the thing has a perimeter rule? Next, did Donald Trump designate his entire property this way because he requested it? Or was it just New Jersey that decided to let it be an out for rich people to bury their family and friends on the property? Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Oh, and by the way, Trump had done that before.